Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I tell you how and why I attract birds to my garden. So let's go. I've had a major interest when it comes to birds for the last 20 years. It all started when my kids were younger. We used to love watching the birds at their grandmother's home. In fact, she would give them binoculars so they could get up close and personal with all kinds of birds that were coming in her yard. We were so interested in looking at birds that Grandma often pulled out the National Audubon Society's field guidebook just so we could look up all the different kinds of birds that were coming and going. And here's a fun fact. When my daughter was in high school, she loved birds so much that she competed in a Science Olympiad ornithology event. And yes, I did mentor her and her friend. And what a great time we had. We learned so much when it came to clutch sizes, calls, beaks, feet, you name it. We learned a lot about birds. And it didn't stop there. Now that I'm such an avid gardener, I really had a keen interest in attracting birds to my yard for a number of reasons. Yes, birds are very pretty. They're very cute to look at, but did you know that they're in fact very beneficial to have in our gardens? They provide natural pest control. They pollinate our flowers. They even control some of the weeds in our yard. Some of them are known for conserving our environment. I mentioned earlier that they're great entertainment to have in the yard. I mean, who doesn't love watching hummingbirds for hours? And along with that, they provide a lot of education to us, as I mentioned earlier, how my kids and I used to love learning all about the birds. And they can even help reduce the use of chemicals in our gardens. Now I'm going to play devil's advocate. I've told you all the positives or pros for having birds in the yard. Now let me just share some of the cons just so you're educated. When you feed the birds, the seeds drop, and those seeds can help attract unwanted visitors, such as bears, squirrels, chipmunks, as well as other critters. And when it comes to that bird seed, it can get pricey, so cost is a factor. Attracting birds to the yard can unfortunately increase the risk of transmitting diseases, such as E. coli, avian flu, as well as salmonella. And when you have birds in the yard, you can expect a little bit of the mess. Sometimes they do need to go to the bathroom, so you might find bird poop in your yard or on your porch, in unwanted places like on your car. And then also when they drop their seeds, the seeds can create weed seeds in your yard, where all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of random seeds that are germinating, and they don't look so pretty in your flower beds. Some people do argue that when we feed the birds, unfortunately, we might be making some of the birds sick. That's why it's really important, though, to make sure you're always cleaning your bird baths, you're always providing fresh food, and cleaning your bird feeders. I mentioned unwanted predators. Another unwanted predator could be, for example, your neighbor's cat. All of a sudden, you might be finding that the cat is in your yard because there's so many birds, but then the cat is using some of your flower beds as a litter box. That's not really that fun, so something to keep in mind. If you still want to attract birds in your yard, but you don't want to have bird feeders, there are other alternatives, such as native plants as well as native flowers. There are a whole bunch of flowers out there that birds are attracted to when it comes to seed as well as nectar. Just do a search on the internet and you'll find a whole list of plants that can attract birds to your yard. Since I've talked about attracting birds in my yard in previous videos, I think that's the reason why a few companies reached out to me asking me if I would try out a couple of their products that help with bringing birds into my yard. I was thrilled because not only do I like feeding the birds, I also like providing shelter for the birds during the cold winter months when they're looking just to get out of the snow, as well as during the springtime when they're looking for a place to have their little babies and have a nest. The first company I'm going to tell you about is called PeckPerk. They reached out to me because they had this really cool bird feeder. It's not just any old bird feeder. It actually has an integrated camera on there. We set up this feeder during the late winter, early spring months, and we've been testing it out, and it's actually pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you when we unboxed it, set it up, and then some of the footage that we got when we were taking pictures and video off the camera. This is the original packaging that it came in. So let's go ahead and take out the contents of the package. So let's dive in and open up the box. And the first thing that comes out is the feeder itself. It has a pretty complete instruction manual included, and I'm just showing you some pages from the instruction manual. Here are some smaller components that were included, including the USB cord, as well as some of the mounting hardware. These are some large diameter hose clamps in case you want to attach your feeder to a pole. This appears to be a hummingbird feeder. I don't plan on using it, but it's definitely optional. And this here is the antenna that's going to get assembled and attached to the feeder. And now you're looking at a nice large PeckPerk perch for the birds to perch on. The camera has a protective clear plastic that you'll need to remove. Overall, I feel that the feeder is very well made. I also like the color of it. It's not too bright, not too flashy. Here is where you attach the antenna, and just below it is a charging port with an on-off button that's covered with a watertight rubber seal. The tray in the front holds a reasonable amount of bird food, which you can put in towards the back of the feeder. Towards the top back of the feeder, if you unscrew it, that's where you would put your food in. The convenient solar panel will keep your camera charged. It comes with mounting hardware so that you can easily install your solar panel. And here are all the contents of what you get. And now the feeder as well as the solar panel have been assembled. What's nice is there are a lot of different ways you can install this feeder. And here's a close-up of how the feeder looks like with all the components installed. Here on my balcony is where I feed all my birds so that the bear cannot get to the feeders. So this is where I chose to put my new feeder. We installed the feeder as well as the solar panel to an existing 2x4 board that we already had. And then we zip tied it to our railing. Here you can see the zip ties as well as close-up detail of how it was attached. It took my lovely birds about a week to feel comfortable with their new feeder. I offered them mealworm as well as sunflower hearts, and they were very happy once they felt comfortable with the feeder. Some of the birds that have come to the feeder have included bluebirds, golden finches, and even nuthatches, just to name a few. What did you think? Didn't you think that was pretty cool? I don't know, I did. I enjoyed looking at the birds so much that I often found myself distracted and just wanting to look at the birds on my phone all the time. And what I'll do is put a link to that bird feeder down in the description below in case you're interested. The next company that reached out to me is called Kingsyard. They asked me if I wanted to try out a birdhouse, and I said, why not? Because even though I have plenty of birdhouses in my yard, they're not in the best condition. So I figured I might as well give it a try. And what better time than right now? It's springtime, the birds are all nesting, they're having their little babies, so I figured it's a great time to put up a new birdhouse for them. Mr. Budget Gardener helped me when it came to the unboxing as well as the installation. I'm going to go ahead and put the footage from that day on the screen now. Here's the original packaging that the birdhouse came in. Once you open it up, you see some hardware. And there aren't a lot of pieces. The next thing that we pull out is the birdhouse itself. It looks very well made. It's made of wood, not plastic. There's a latch on the front so you can easily open up your birdhouse and clean it out each year. In the hole where the birds enter and exit from, there appears to be a nice metal piece, and that just helps protect it so that critters or animals cannot chew out the hole and make it bigger, which has been a problem with a lot of my other feeders. So now let's look to see where we're going to install the new birdhouse. I like to have them installed in my backyard because that's where my feeders are and that's where I'm going to enjoy my birds the most. Bluebirds and nuthatches are two common birds that like to nest in my yard. Here we're looking at some of the current birdhouses that I have that don't look so good because you can see the critters have gone after the hole where the birds enter and exit from and have really opened up those entrances. This is a tree where I'd like to install my new birdhouse. I normally like to install my birdhouses as high as I can reach so that I don't have to get on a ladder. So first a top screw is going to get installed. Not all the way in though, because we need it to be sticking out enough so we can put the birdhouse on top of the screw. The back of the birdhouse has a small keyhole that you can slip onto the screw so that it easily mounts. Next, let's add the second screw into the hole that's on the inside of the birdhouse to make sure that the birdhouse is stable and secure. And now my birdhouse is ready to be used, and even though I didn't have footage of it, I did notice a bird checking the house out. I have great news. Within a few days of installing the birdhouse, there was actually a male bluebird checking out the house. And not only checking it out, but actually going in and coming out of the house. And now he's at a point where he's just checking in, and I'm pretty sure he's feeding little babies that are in there. And if you're interested in reading more about this birdhouse, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments if you like to attract birds to your yard. And if so, let me know what are some of the favorite birds that you've seen in your yard. I only once, had an indigo bunting in my yard. I often attract the eastern bluebirds, which I absolutely adore. The pileated woodpecker is just so interesting. It seems like a prehistoric bird. I love bringing the orioles into the yard. They actually enjoy eating the jelly more than the oranges I've found. And then the cardinals, they're just a classic. And when I see the little fledglings of any of these birds, including the eastern bluebirds and cardinals, my heart melts. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.